This is episode 27 of the Shameproof Your Life podcast, the one where I talk about the laundromat. I'm your host and life coach, Danita Bremer. Have you ever received a prompting that you ignored for a long time, like 17 years? This podcast is that for me. I'm telling my stories, I'm learning from my past, and I'm inviting you along for the ride because I know my story can help others. And in telling our stories, we shameproof our lives. Okay, episode 27, and the first one that officially dropped late. So I've been traveling a little bit. We headed out to Utah where my girls attended EFY at BYU. And my husband and I and my son, we hung out at an Airbnb. And of course, I always have way too high of expectations of how much work I'm going to accomplish while I am away from home. And so I thought I might record a podcast episode or two while I was there, but didn't end up working like that. Instead, I spent lots of time with clients, past clients, current clients, friends, coach friends. It was very lovely. But I didn't get an episode recorded, and we got home about 24 hours before I would normally have liked to have the recording done. And I thought I would do it when I got home, and then I just wasn't feeling it. And so I allowed myself a little bit of extra time and space to record. So I am recording on the day this episode comes out. It's like you're right here with me. So today I want to talk about the laundromat. And I recognize that this is kind of an different, interesting, unique topic, but this one, or actually a couple of stories that happened at the laundromat kept coming to me. And so I'm just taking that as a sign. And as I reflected about what I wanted to say, and to be honest, I don't do a whole lot of preparation. Usually I just kind of put together a few little bullet points and then I just chat at you, which I'm sure you can tell. But as I was really thinking about, like, what do I have to say about this? I recognized that the laundromat and laundry in general is kind of a theme in my life that I hadn't really noticed before. So I want to start with a little bit of a recap. If you've listened to all my episodes, then you know this, but I don't assume that everyone has listened to all of them. And you don't have to listen to all of them in order to kind of get the gist. But for about 5 years, from about the age of 9 to 14 ish, I lived in a place in kind of a remote area, and we had no running water or electricity. So, about every week or two, we would have to go to the laundromat. And so, I have a lot of memories of this laundromat that we had in the little town I grew up in. A lot of time spent there with my mom, mostly. My dad would sometimes come and hang out with us too, but mostly it was my mom and sometimes my sister. Now, before this, I have a couple of memories relating to laundry and laundromats. The main one being in California, in Southern California, where I was born before I moved to the little town in Washington state. I have this one memory being very young, probably 3 or 4 years old, and walking home from the laundromat. I don't remember the laundromat itself, but I remember walking home and I remember walking next to the stroller and my I must have been old enough that my little sister was born, but I don't remember her being there. She probably was. But I do distinctly recall that the load of laundry, the big bag of laundry, was in the stroller and I was walking next to the stroller. So I do have that memory. And then after this period of time, when I was about age 9 to 14, I don't specifically recall how or where we did our laundry. There were a couple of years where we had a washer and dryer in our home. And I think it's so interesting because during those years when we had washer and dryer in our home, I was 17, 18 years old, maybe 16 years old. I don't remember ever doing laundry. So I don't know if my mom did all of our laundry. I do remember doing laundry my freshman year of college. I lived in the dorms and there was a laundry room like in the basement or something like that. I mean, obviously, I probably had to do laundry every week or 2, and I remember it a couple times, but I don't have any, like, really solid specific memories of that. I do have kind of a little funny story relating to laundry. After my husband and I were married and we were moving from the Seattle area to the Bay Area in California, we were looking for an apartment and we were pregnant. We were about 4 or 5 months pregnant with my oldest. And so I was anticipating what it would be like to have a baby. And I told my husband, if you can find us a place to live that has a washer and dryer in the apartment or in the place, then you will never have to do laundry the rest of your life. I have regretted those words occasionally, but he did find us a place. We moved into this little duplex in Sunnyvale, California, and there was a washer and dryer in the attached garage. So that counted. And he has rarely had to do laundry. I don't know if he's ever had to do laundry. He may have chosen to help out with the laundry. There have been times when for sure he was looking for something and it was in the dryer. But pretty much our whole entire marriage, because that was very early on, um, except for, those first couple of years, I do remember him helping with laundry in apartments in Seattle that, like, if it was raining, you'd have to like dash down the stairs, dash up the stairs. So he definitely helped. But since then, I have been the primary laundry person in our home, and as such, all three of my kids do their own laundry. So my husband gets a free pass, and nothing at all on him. It's just an arrangement that we made, and I've kept my end of the bargain. Um, so we had this period of time when we didn't have running water or electricity, and so we had to use the laundromat. And overall, what I remember about that time and spending time in the laundromat is like a lot of being silly and just having like, I don't know, those were times when like my mom would just chat with us about stuff. Some serious discussions, some silly discussions, a lot of doing homework in the laundromat, and of course, a lot of laundry being done there. So it's kind of interesting because I don't really mind doing laundry. It's a chore that I prefer over other chores for sure. And I wonder, as I was thinking about this, the thought kind of occurred to me that perhaps one of the reasons is because I have such a strong association between laundry and my mom. She was just like always there. And, hanging out at the laundromat, would take us a couple of hours to get our laundry done and folded. And so I wonder if that's part of it. That has never been like a conscious thought that I've had before, but I I think probably that's one of the reasons why I don't mind laundry at all. Um, I have this one memory where it must have been when I was pretty young, before my sister, who's 2 years younger than me, started school, or perhaps she was in kindergarten, because I have the impression that my parents picked me up from school and then we went straight to the laundromat, and my dad was there, and the big glass window in the front of the laundromat had been shattered, like a rock had been kicked up at it, or I don't know exactly what happened, but this very large window, like a big, huge picture window was just completely shattered. It was still in the frame intact, but it just was completely cracked. And I remember my dad telling me, "Don't touch the window. Your sister already found out what happens when you touch a cracked window." So apparently, before I got there, she was kind of fascinated by the way the window looked, and she rubbed her hand across it and got cut on her palm. And so I have that memory, and that's kind of what kept coming back to me, as I was thinking about this episode and like, what story do I want to tell? What could I mention that would be useful to people? And I don't know if you listened to the last episode, I'm trying to get away from trying to be useful and just tell the stories, because this is kind of a spiritual prompting for me. I do consider it part of my family history. And I also heard myself just saying, like, who wants to just listen to a random person's stories? And then I realized I love hearing random people's stories and just, I love hearing stories from people's lives. So sometimes there might be a lesson, but not always. And really, what I want this to be is more of me telling a story or two, and then you taking from it whatever you get from it. So I'm trying to kind of get away from wrapping it up in a nice tidy bow and giving you the lesson. And then the other thing that I very much associate with being at the laundromat, and for this story, as far as my memory serves, it was just my mom and I at the laundromat. I don't remember my sister being there, but the conversation that I'm going to mention here happened outside. So there was like a little bench where people could sit outside the laundromat. The laundromat itself was always freezing cold. There was an older gentleman or maybe a lady, I don't know, maybe it was an older couple that ran the laundromat, and they had a little office inside the laundromat, and it was like right behind the wall of dryers. So I'm guessing that they probably got really warm, and so we would, put the laundry in and then go sit outside, especially when the weather was nice. And so maybe my sister was inside the laundromat, but my mom and I were outside, and I was probably 14 years old at the time because I was dating my first boyfriend. And this boy was a boy, you can go back to episode 1. I'm pretty sure I kind of gave an overview, but this boy was actually introduced to me by my mother, and she really liked him. And um, I can't remember exactly, but of course, I had some shame around dating before the age of 16, which kind of went against standards that I was taught at church. And I just remember sitting there, and then all of a sudden, my mom asked me how things were going with my boyfriend and I. And I'm to kind of protect his privacy, I'm going to call him Jack. And I said, fine, like things are good, it's fine. And she said, you know, teenage boys have needs. And of course, I wasn't so naive for that to go completely over my head. And I was so embarrassed and uncomfortable. And I was like, Mom, no, stop. And it's kind of funny because my kids say similar things to me when I have uncomfortable conversations with them. And she's like, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. I just want to know. I think what she wanted to know was I having sex? And I wasn't at the time. But she was like, boys have needs. And if you want to keep him as your boyfriend, there's certain things that you should do. You don't necessarily have to have sex. It was kind of like in this vein of conversation. And I just was very uncomfortable and very mortified and like, Mom, no, you do not need to have this conversation with me. It's fine. But it always kind of stuck in my head. And I don't know about you, but I had several of these situations, conversations where something that was said, I didn't necessarily fully understand it at the time, And it's not that I didn't understand what my mom was trying to say, it's just that it stuck with me because I guess what I didn't understand was her point of view and where she was coming from. I understood what she was trying to say to me, but it kind of stuck with me because it really said a lot about my mother that at the time as like a 14-year-old girl. So, how old was my mother? She had me when she was 17. 17 and 14 is like 31. So she was still very young. And I think I sensed that I would reflect back on that conversation again and again to help me understand who my mother was and her point of view on life and, boys and men and sex and those kinds of things. So I was very uncomfortable, and there was a lot that went unsaid in that conversation. There was a lot of reading between the lines, so to speak, listening between sentences that she was saying. And I have revisited that conversation in my mind over and over again. I think mostly what I took was that she believed that in order to be safe and secure in your relationship, that you had to have sex or you had to do things the way your boyfriend, husband, whoever wanted them to be done. That was kind of the message she was sending me. And I don't, I'm not like that. I am very different from my mom in that way. And, it was just a few minutes of kind of awkward conversation, but also many, many years of trying to unravel what was going on in her mind at the time. The other thing that I thought about as I was considering talking about the laundromat was that the idea of place is prevalent in, I would assume, most everybody's life. I'm a fairly avid reader. I kind of go in and out of reading a lot and reading a little. Since I've started my own business, I read more nonfiction, but historically, I've read a lot of fiction. And because I'm also very self aware, I know that I really like a plot driven book. But if you can find a book that has a lot of plot and also a lot of character development and also a strong sense of place, you have got this magical combination, right? I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Um, I actually didn't read Harry Potter when it first came out. It was a decade later, and then I read it, and it was kind of the thing. I think I had been reading a little bit before that, but it was kind of the thing that got me reading again after not really reading much um, in high school and college and after college, and being a brand new mom and all of that. And I remember one year I thought, I want to get back to reading. I really enjoyed reading as a kid and I want to get back to it. And so I picked up a few books here and there, but nothing that really, called to me. And then I kind of on a whim decided to read Harry Potter and I read all 7 books back to back to back to back. It was like over the course of a summer and I just totally got enraptured in this story. And even today, like I'm rereading the books with my 14-year-old daughter, and it's still very much like a culture of our family. I love it because it's like a good versus evil, almost like a parable in a way of Christ and a savior kind of thing. And so I see a lot of spiritual parallels there. But I think that Harry Potter does such a good job of being very plot driven, but also, at least over the course of the 7 books, developing the characters and then this element of place, which, when I first read Harry Potter, I'd never been to Europe. I didn't know very much about the UK or London or anything like that. But The author, J.K. Rowling, does such a fabulous job, especially with Hogwarts, of describing and kind of putting you in the place. Now, if it's only place driven, because there are some books um, like maybe not The Hobbit, but some of those books that are very descriptive of place. The other book that comes to my mind is I forget the author's name, but These Is My Words. I read that, and that one is probably more character driven, but there's also a strong sense of place there that I related to. So normally if place is the driving factor of the book, I'm not so into it. But if it's just one of the factors, and then there's also lots of plot, then I'll be into it. But as I was thinking about the laundromat in particular, I realized that it was a place in my life that kind of was there over the course of several years and that I had a lot of memories and feelings around just because of how much time I had spent there. And there are some other places that kind of fit this description as well. The where I lived that didn't have the running water or electricity, we called it the hill. I know, super descriptive and original. But especially the summertime up the hill, riding my bike, feeling the wind, the sun, just like the grass and the weeds and the wildflowers and the grasshoppers, like I don't know, it just like grounds me and brings me back. My grandparents' house is another place that had a thread for several years throughout my life, probably one of the longest threads throughout my life, and had a totally separate, different kind of feel and emotion that I associated with my grandparents' house. It was very much like safety and security. The lake where we spent many, many, many days and nights camping and swimming and just being at the lake barbecuing, that's a place that is very strong in my mind. And then the other thing is high school, like the actual building, but in particular, the band room, because the band room, when I was in middle school in seventh, eighth grade, they were remodeling the high school. And the band room, well, band and the band rooms in general was a theme for a long period of my life from fourth grade until 10th or 11th grade. I can't remember when I quit band. And so, about 7 years that band was a part of my life, but the band room was, I don't think I ever went to the high school band room as an elementary school kid, but definitely as a middle schooler, we would go there. And so the band room was like a place that I don't know, honestly, what comes up when I think of the band room is like, this is where I belong. These are my people. This is my thing. And I quit band when I was in 10th or 11th grade and never picked up the instrument again. I played clarinet. But like that's what comes up, that feeling of like, this is my place. And then the last couple of places that came up as very strong sense of place for me is Hawaii. I've been there 4 times on vacation. It's where I went on my honeymoon, and I just, like, fell in love with Hawaii. I just love Hawaii, and, like, I can conjure up in my mind, like, the smell and the feel of Hawaii, and I just love it so much. And then the year we lived in Bremen, Germany, I didn't really love living in Germany, but there was this, Burger Park, this large park right in the middle of the town that was this big open space with a pond and streams and I just really loved riding my bike or walking through the park. And it's almost like how I feel about living up the hill. And that kind of thing, like being outside a lot, being in nature, and the feel that it gives you, especially like that summertime feel. So those are some places that hold some special meaning to me. There are other places, but not as much. Like all the other places I thought of seemed more transient, less permanent in my life. And I don't know, there's something about the laundromat that kind of holds a special place in my heart. There's that word again, place. I think not very many sad memories or difficult memories happened there. Not that none did, but mostly it was like this place where we went to do laundry and it was like the in between, right? You can get your homework out, you could just be there. And then we would, try to pass the time. We would get bored and we would try to pass the time and we would push each other in the carts and I don't know, it's almost this like neutral but kind of fondness that I have for the laundromat. And so that is what I have for you today. I'm super curious what places hold a special corner of your heart. These are the kind of questions that I love asking people and like getting to know them. So that's a great question for like a icebreaker or something like that. That's enough for now, and so are you. I would be ever so grateful if you would rate, review, or share the podcast. I also have a link to my survey in the show notes and would be so grateful if you would fill that out. And lastly, I would just love to continue the conversation. Come find me on Instagram or Facebook at Danita Bremer Coaching and tell me what special places are in your life. Until next time, go be you and follow the spirit.